Good morning. This is Northern Light for Friday, September 15th. I'm Todd Moe. Monica Sondreski is back Monday morning. The national child poverty rate has more than doubled in the past year, according to new data released by the Census Bureau this week. The rate has jumped to 12% nationally, 18% in New York State. It's even much higher here in the North Country.
We saw numbers very close to double pretty rapidly as people stopped having that extra cushion to help them afford, just basic necessities.
Lewis County has the highest mortality rate for death by suicide in New York. The county's traumatic loss team is trying to combat that. It's hard work, but also affirming.
I get nervous before every activation or debriefing or every time my phone rings, but I am constantly in awe of the resilience of our community and their strengths and their resourcefulness and how we all come together during these tough moments.
Gore Mountain in North Creek used to be home to one of the largest garnet mines in the world. Today it's a preserved site, but garnet mining still continues in the area. Also, longtime newspaperman Bob O'Mara shares his love for restoring old printing presses in Madrid, New York. All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stay tuned. Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by St. Lawrence Health, whose affiliation with Rochester Regional Health means more patient access to specialty care. stlawrencehealthsystem.org. And the Depot Theater at Westport, a professional equity theater in the Adirondacks, celebrating its 45th season, depottheater.org. This is Northern Light. I'm Todd Moe. Our first story discusses suicide, and if you prefer not to hear it, tune back in about 5 minutes. Lewis County has the highest mortality rate for death by suicide in New York this year, almost 3 times the state average. A team of volunteers has grown up over the last 5 years in the county to help families and friends cope and try to prevent the next tragic loss. Amy Feiereisel reports.
When just one person dies by suicide, there are big ripple effects.
The number of lost survivors someone leaves behind can be really vast.
That's Anna Platts, the Deputy Public Health Director in Lewis County, which has a population of about 25,000 people and the highest suicide mortality rate in New York. Platt says it's hard to speculate about why the suicide mortality rate is so high in Lewis County. With such a small population, the difference of a few deaths can swing them from below average to the worst in the state. But national studies have found that older people, men, and military personnel are all at a higher risk for death by suicide. In Lewis County, there are about 4 to 8 of these deaths per year. Platt says that's not a small number.
We may have 4 to 6 or 8 suicide deaths per year, but the people impacted by each of those losses is really significant.
Studies estimate that at least 100 people are impacted by a single death by suicide.
It can really rock a community, especially a small community.
Platt says suicide prevention is a top priority for the county health department. Like most, it has a crisis line and a suite of suicide prevention programs. But it also has something less common, a post-vention program. It's called the Lewis County Traumatic Loss Team. It's been around since 2018. Platts is the team's coordinator. She says post-vention is about immediately supporting suicide loss survivors, like family, friends, and coworkers.
To really help them find some stable ground and ultimately reduce the risk of contagion after that loss.
According to the National Institute of Mental Health, one of the highest risk factors for death by suicide is being exposed to suicide. That's what Platts means by contagion.
There's a certain amount of vulnerability to those individuals after the death has occurred.
The Lewis County Traumatic Loss Team helps people process their grief. About a dozen trained volunteers respond to deaths by suicide, but also drug overdoses and automobile crashes. Anyone can request their help after a loss. Their support can look like a lot of things. One method is debriefing circles, which all volunteers are trained how to facilitate.
It's a series of questions. We literally sit in a circle with the loss survivors and talk through how this loss is showing up in their lives.
Platt says it can also look like a shoulder to cry on, someone to talk to, giving survivors resources. Originally, the team's goal was to meet with lost survivors 1 to 3 days after a death. But in January, the team started offering an active response. That means they go directly to the scene of a death, often to a home.
It's, helping people figure out, okay, these are the steps that need to be taken.
Carla Hellinger is one of the team's volunteers. She says the active response allows them to be there when people are feeling most helpless and confused.
And it might be something simple like, we need to get you out of this house for tonight. Let me help you pack a bag so that we can do that. And then, these are the people that maybe immediately we need to contact. Let's get in touch with the school.
Hellinger says that also takes emotional work off the plates of people like the police and the coroner.
They have, tasks that they need to complete. So I think our presence has been helpful.
Hellinger works for the Lewis County Office for the Aging. The other trained volunteers include social workers, law enforcement, and educators, like Becky Tiffany. She works at Loudville Central School as a middle school counselor.
Just a wide range of support. And so when we get a call, we try to figure out, who's got a little bit of maybe familiarity with the situation or the family or the whatever it may be to kind of help us navigate.
For each death they respond to, between 6 and 10 each year, the traumatic loss team might work with a couple to a couple dozen people. They also often support first responders and healthcare professionals who are involved. Tiffany says it's important work and personal.
Why do I do it? I grew up in this community. I'm a pretty big part of the school system. I know a lot of the families.
She says it helps her to know the team exists and to be part of it.
At least it's that connection to know that somebody is looking out for them.
Anna Platts, the team coordinator, says it's hard work, but it's also affirming.
For me, it honestly started as part of my job, but I did not expect to love it. I get nervous before every activation or debriefing or every time my phone rings, but I am constantly in awe of the resilience of our community and their strengths and their resourcefulness and how we all come together during these tough moments.
She says they all hope that their work means there are less of those tough moments in Lewis County. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.
This week is National Suicide Prevention Week, an annual week-long campaign that aims to engage and inform the public about suicide prevention and warning signs of suicide. If you or someone you know is having thoughts about suicide, call the national number 988. Platt says if people are interested in volunteering for the Lewis County Traumatic Loss Team, they should fill out the volunteer application. You can find a link to that in our online story on our website at ncpr.org. The first American to receive the COVID-19 vaccine in 2020 is the first in line for the latest Pfizer vaccine to protect against new strains of the virus. Sandra Lindsay is a nurse at Northwell Health on Long Island. She says getting these vaccinations keeps her and her family safe.
I'm grateful to be in this position, to be the first to be getting this new updated COVID vaccine, but more importantly, to be in a position to raise awareness about the importance of getting vaccinated.
Dr. Bruce Farber works with Lindsay at Northwell Health as Chief of Public Health. He says the new vaccine can prevent severe illness from the new strains of COVID that make up the majority of cases.
It's really not just a cold. It affects the heart. It can cause prolonged fatigue, brain fog, and the like. And so that's the reason we are pushing this vaccine for the public health.
Farber and Lindsay say the updated vaccine could prevent hospitalizations from surging this winter and decrease the burden on emergency rooms and healthcare workers. Get more news all the time on our website at ncpr.org. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 10 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe. Stay tuned. Child poverty rates jump here in the North Country. We'll have more coming up in just a moment. This is Caramelo Trio out of Potsdam, and you're invited to a concert featuring the trio Sunday night, starting at 5 o'clock at the Yellow Barn, the Iva Smith Memorial Gallery of Fine Art in Hammond, right on Highway 37, the Yellow Barn Concert Series. Join Oscar Sarmiento on guitar and vocals, Beth Robinson on cello, Mark Seymour on drums. That's Caramelo Trio, Sunday, 5 p.m., the Yellow Barn Concert Series at the Iva Smith Memorial Gallery of Fine Art in Hammond. Northern Light is supported by Adirondack Foundation, making grants to nonprofits that address community issues of childcare, attainable housing, career pathways, basic needs, and more. AdirondackFoundation.org. And John Brown Lives, hosting the Blues at Timbuktu concert this Sunday from noon to 5 at the John Brown State Historic Site in Lake Placid. JohnBrownLives.org. The national child poverty rate has more than doubled in the past year, according to new data released by the Census Bureau this week. The rate has jumped to 12% nationally and 18% in New York State, but it's even higher in much of the North Country. Lucy Grindon reports.
According to the latest census data, Franklin County has the highest child poverty rate in the North Country at 27%. Ellie Gent works for the Joint Council for Economic Opportunity, or JCEO, of Clinton and Franklin counties. It's a nonprofit organization that helps low-income people by offering things like food pantries, weatherization assistance, and counseling on how to find childcare and transportation. Back in March, when the extra pandemic-era emergency allotments to the SNAP program ended, JCEO saw more clients visiting their outreach centers and food pantries.
We saw numbers very close to double pretty rapidly as people stopped having that extra cushion to help them afford, just basic necessities.
Gent says families with children have been especially susceptible to slipping back into poverty.
The more children you see in a household, the higher the chances of the poverty. It kind of correlates.
Experts have also said the child poverty increase is due to the end of the enhanced child tax credits, which gave households up to $300 a month for each child during the pandemic. That program stopped at the end of 2021. So far, JCEO has been able to meet demand at its food pantries, but Gent says it's costing them a lot.
We are a little nervous looking forward. The cost right now for operating pantries in both counties, and we have, more than 10 community outreach centers in both counties. It's costing about $6,000 a month, and that is including the fact that we're able to glean a lot of food from places like Walmart and Hannaford and Price Chopper.
After Franklin County, St. Lawrence County has the second highest child poverty rate in the North Country at 26%. The rate is also higher than the state's 18% average in Lewis and Herkimer counties. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
From iron to talc, the North Country is rich in minerals. The sprawling mines that extracted them were big business across the region from the late 1800s into the early 20th century. Today, a look back at the history and evolution of a mine in the southeastern Adirondacks that dug garnet, a dark red crystal prized for its hardiness. Anna Williams-Bergen has this North Country at Work story.
In 1889, Henry Barton bought land near the summit of Gore Mountain for 10 cents an acre and started a garnet mine.
There were somewhere around 13 garnet mines in the Adirondacks, but Barton's had the mother lode on Gore Mountain. It was at one point the biggest garnet mine in the world.
That's Judy Brown. She and her son Jason Brown run the Gore Mountain Mineral and Gem Shop, where they make garnet jewelry and run tours of the original mine site. Judy says that Barton Mine was special not only due to its size, but also the unique shape of its garnet.
The garnet crystals that you see up there are kind of smushed.
That's because they formed before the Adirondacks even existed. As the mountains were taking shape, the heat and pressure of the formation reshaped the garnet. Judy says that it also made Gore's garnet harder than most, and therefore even more valuable.
The garnet that you find on Gore is much different than almost any place else in the world.
In the beginning, miners chipped away at the rock by hand using pickaxes and shovels. The rocks were extracted, loaded onto carts, and taken by horse off the mountain. The raw garnet was then taken by train to Philadelphia, where it was processed into sandpaper.
After 1920, we got a new technology called dynamite, and that changed the industry drastically.
That's Jason Brown. He says that advances like dynamite and steam shovels allowed miners to work faster. Barton Mines also built a mill in the 1920s and started processing their own garnet. The mine became a major economic player in the community. It employed about 300 people, and Judy says that a community grew up around it, right on the slopes of Gore Mountain itself.
They had a firehouse, they had a lodge, they have homes that are still being used up there.
Business stayed good throughout the 20th century. Garnet is prized for use in cutting and smoothing technologies that do all kinds of things. Here's Jason Brown.
The red shell on the inside of peanuts is removed by garnet.
In the early 1980s, Barton Mines moved its operations to the nearby Ruby Mountain in North River. They've been there ever since. Today, Barton employs about 75 people, which Judy says is a big deal in the area. Barton mines garnet for industrial uses like water jet and sandblasting.
It's a very important industry because we don't have a lot of industry around North Creek.
By the time Barton stopped mining at Gore and moved to Ruby Mountain, they had dug a massive pit over 100 feet deep at Gore. Today, that pit is a historical site. Since it hasn't been an active mine in years, nature is starting to come back. Trees have grown up and frogs jump in the ponds. It's also home to the Gore Mountain Mineral and Gem Shop where the Browns work.
You have a 120-foot wall on one side, 3 gorgeous ponds. It is not a bad office.
Barton left the Gore Mountain site due to mining safety regulations, not because they'd taken all the garnet out.
This is the largest garnet deposit possibly in the world, and it's still there.
Today, you can tour the preserved mine and even look for some garnet of your own.
You can find the largest garnet crystals in the world there. They're up to basketball size or bigger.
You can tour the old Barton mine pit at Gore Mountain every weekend until Columbus Day. For North Country Public Radio's North Country at Work project, I'm Anna Williams-Bergen in North Creek.
North Country at Work is a long-running project of NCPR that collects photos and stories about the work history of our region. To view the collection of work photos, go to ncpr.org/work. And our North Country at Work project will be gathering stories, photos, and documenting past and present work in the North Country tomorrow in Lowville at the Cream Cheese Festival in downtown Lowville from 11 to 4. You'll find our table there and a chance to share your work story. Again, for more information, check out the website ncpr.org/work. Crowds will flock to Lowville tomorrow for the annual Cream Cheese Festival. The Lewis County town's Kraft Heinz facility is the largest cream cheese plant in the nation. It produces Philadelphia brand cream cheese. There'll be live music, plenty of food, even a cream cheese recipe contest, according to the Watertown Daily Times. All recipes must feature cream cheese and will be judged on taste, creativity, and presentation. And the festival's main attraction will be a giant cheesecake, all happening tomorrow in Lowville during the annual Cream Cheese Festival. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe. Monica will be back on Monday morning. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, John Warren checks outdoor conditions for the weekend. Also, join us at 8:30 for more of Morning Edition from NPR. Sunshine in the forecast today. The Weather Service says highs 60s near 70, light and variable winds. Cool evenings. This is shoulder season. Lows 30s and 40s overnight tonight. Tomorrow, the Weather Service says mostly cloudy skies. Highs near 70 on Saturday. Maybe a chance of a scattered shower Sunday and Monday with highs upper 60s, low 70s. Right now we have sunshine, 48 degrees here in Canton. But with more of a look at outdoor conditions for the weekend, here's John Warren.
Hurricane Lee is not expected to impact the Adirondacks, except for perhaps some gusty winds on the eastern slopes and higher summits on Saturday. The forecast for this weekend looks nice, and the trees are just beginning to change color in the higher elevations of the central Adirondacks, so expect it to be a busy weekend at popular trailheads, especially along Route 73. The Keene Hiker Shuttle between the Marcy Field parking area and the Garden Trailhead will be running this weekend. The second Route 73 shuttle will begin running next weekend 7 to 7, Saturdays and Sundays through October 8th, and on Monday, October 9th. Water levels around the region are a bit above normal for this time of year, but nothing that should impede water crossings. The Hudson River is forecast to be at about 3¼ feet this weekend at the gauge in North Creek. The Racket River will be at about 5 feet in Piercefield, and Lake Champlain is a bit over 97⅓ feet above Whitehall. Water temperatures have fallen some, and most waters are now in the upper 60s, although Mirror Lake remains around 70 degrees, about the same temperature as both Lake George and Lake Champlain. The upper locks between Upper Saranac and Middle Saranac Lakes will be closed beginning Monday for a rehabilitation project. On the Saranac River section of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, starting in September, both the Union Falls Dam and Casey Road portages are inaccessible. Paddlers are being urged to avoid the dam removal project at the Indian Rapids Dam, which has resulted in extremely hazardous conditions. Paddlers should take the 1.5-mile portage of the Treadwell Mills and Indian Rapids dams at the same time. The project is expected to be completed by the end of September. At the Imperial Mills Dam, there's a fish ladder project, so look out for the portage river left, well above the dam. And finally this week, bird migration is underway. Birdcast is forecasting heavy movement through the western portions of the Adirondacks beginning today. Now is a great time to visit one of the many birding areas at the periphery of the Adirondack Park. Those are the outdoor conditions in the Adirondacks this weekend. For North Country Public Radio, this is John Warren from the New York Almanac. Online at NewYorkAlmanac.com.
Time is coming up on 23 minutes past 8. You are listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe. Monica is back on Monday morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday, the middle of September. He retired from the newspaper business over 20 years ago, but there's still ink in Bob O'Mara's veins. Now in his 80s, O'Mara, who grew up in Ogdensburg, shares the story of restoring an antique desktop printing press. These days, you might find him sorting metal type or tinkering with a vintage printing press in the Village Print Shop at the St. Lawrence Power and Equipment Museum in Madrid. That's where I found him and learned of his lifelong passion for printing presses.
My name is Bob O'Mara. I've been in the printing business ever since I was 13 years old, graduating from OFA, and went to work at the Ogdensburg Journal, right now our hometown here. And I've been in the newspaper and at all levels, from type department at the Journal to administration at the Watertown Times when I retired in 2000. This is a card press. This is a press that used to print calling cards. The people used to use calling cards back then whenever they visited anybody. And this was a little press that was very inexpensive. It was sold to small stationery stores, and they bought it, and they bought type to go with it, and so on and so forth. And it was very easy to run, just a hand crank. Once they put the type in and they inserted the chase into the press, it was just a matter of stacking a load of business cards in the holder over there and just cranking this thing as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Cranking the wheel on as fast as you can. In 15 minutes, you had 100 cards that You stop in, order your cards, choose the face of the type, and then come back in a half an hour and pick them up. Yeah. But this thing was made in, they say, around the year of 1904. It's a copy of a French design. Actually, I've seen photographs of one of these in a window in France, and very, very, very similar. It's an antique. It's a vintage of that time, and it shows it. It's probably one or two of the only operating card presses in the United States that I've been able to research down through. This here, it's a jewel. I call it the queen of the show, right here. So this is Queenie, and I just love running it. There you go. There's your card, sir.
Charming guy. That's Bob O'Mara, longtime newspaperman in the North Country. And you'll find photos of Bob standing next to that restored 1904 business card press. He rebuilt it. It was a box of parts, and Bob put it back together using some old photos as guides. You'll find it on display at the St. Lawrence Power and Equipment Museum in Madrid, and there are photos of Bob in that calling card business press on our website at ncpr.org. 26 minutes past 8. This is North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe. Well, yeah, cool, crisp evenings. That means the fall foliage season is underway. And I want to give you just kind of a quick postcard of what's happening around our region in terms of fall colors, according to the I Love NY Fall Foliage Report. In the Adirondacks, Saranac Lake spotters are predicting up to 20% leaf change this weekend. Spotters in Tupper Lake, Mount Arab, up to a 20% transition. Some of the emerging colors, I love this part: burgundy, claret, rhubarb, maize, copper, bronze. Those are some of the colors that our leaf peepers are spotting around the Adirondacks. Malone, spotters in Malone predicting a little less than 10% change this weekend. 20% change in the Old Forge area, shades of golden yellow. Lake Pleasant, spotters there expecting a 15% leaf change with some oranges and reds. Lowville, about a 10% foliage change. Lake Placid, 10% leaf change. Wilmington, Upper J, Ausable Forks, about a 10% change. And Thousand Island Seaway and St. Lawrence County observers expecting about a 10% color change this weekend. Muted shades of yellow, orange, and red. You can check out the fall foliage color report every week. The website is iloveny.com/foliage. There's a lot happening this weekend. You want to check our online community calendar for events and contact information. That's at ncpr.org. Tonight, you're invited to the Barney Gage film series at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Canton for a showing of the film Arctic Summer, a portrait of the indigenous community during one of their last summers before they're forced to leave their land because of climate change. That's 7 o'clock tonight, that film at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Canton, part of the Cultivating Climate Justice series. It's free. It's open to everyone. And they'll have some guest speakers there tonight as well. The Sierra Club's Aaron Mayer will be there to talk. Jessica Rogers and Michael Popovich of SUNY Potsdam, also experts talking about climate change tonight, 7 o'clock. The film Arctic Summer, and then those conversations start at 7 at the UU Church in Canton. That's free and open to everybody. Also tonight, 7 to 9, stop by Blue Seed Studios in Saranac Lake. Sober, open-minded Mike, spotlight artist for this month is Blessed Dirt. That's free, and that's at the Blue Seed Studios in Saranac Lake. And then tomorrow at noon, a public unveiling of a historic roadside marker to celebrate the recent naming of John Thomas Brook. The new name pays homage to the 19th century black settler John Thomas, who escaped enslavement in Maryland and built a farm near the small stream in Vermontville. That's happening noon tomorrow. The public unveiling of a historic roadside marker celebrating the recent naming of John Thomas Brook in Onchayota. Check our website for more events this weekend. That's at ncpr.org/calendar. That's it for Northern Light for this Friday, September 15th. Have a great weekend. I'm Todd Moe. Be well.